after I called you the other day, Father,
yes.
and I found out happily you were not dead,
Mm-hmm.
the next night, I think it was Sunday,
Yes,
on 60 Minutes, lo and behold,
yes,
they put a picture of your book, Hostage to the Devil, on the screen in connection with a story they ran.
That's right.
And
Dr. Olson.
And Dr. Olson. I think I had given you the first news of that, and I'll bet lots of other people have talked to you about it since.
Since, yeah, but you were the first. You were the first to tell me about it. And my eyes popped out of the place when I saw it.
All right, to give everybody some sort of background, this is with regard to a 60-minute story about a lady with multiple personality disorder, a Wisconsin woman, who went to a doctor, and the doctor said she had 126 different personalities, distinct and different personalities. Over many years, he treated her, Dr. Kenneth Olson, and the allegation is that he hypnotized her and that he actually put these personalities into her, including the Bride of Satan, teenage boys, you name it, she had it. It cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in insurance money, hypnosis again and again and again over years and years and years, and then finally culminating in this psychiatrist performing an exorcism.
I know.
They said, based on your book, Hostage to the Devil.
Right, using the formula put in the back of that book.
And, by the way, he thought, I guess, that it was a success, that it had successfully exorcised her. Yeah. And so there's a lot of legal battling and lawsuits pending and so forth and so on over all of this. But I thought I would try and get your reaction to that.
Well, I'll tell you my reaction, Art, is this. And don't be very surprised at this. My reaction is great fear for the safety of Dr. Olson. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The essence of exorcism, performing an exorcism, is a clash between the exorcist and the demon allegedly possessing somebody who is to be exorcised.
Yes.
And it's not simply a prayer, and it's not simply a blessing. It is an actual
battle.
clash.
It's like a
conversation.
Battle. Like a battle.
Yeah. And you can only do that, according to the theory, the belief, you can only do that with immunity, because you're facing, allegedly, according to faith, you're facing an archangel, albeit a fallen archangel, called Lucifer. And that archangel has an intellect and resources far beyond anything any human being commands. And in order to tussle with him, tangle with it, or him, or it, or whatever we want to call it, because he has no gender,
right.
In order to do that, you have to have the authority to say, what is your name? Why are you here? When did it start? And get out. And in order to do that, you have to have permission. And that's why we always counsel people, never on their own bat, to tangle with anything really demonic, because if you do, you're going to lose. And if I could talk, which I can't on account of privileged communication, I could tell very, very scary and awesome stories, frightening stories about psychiatrists who did try and exorcise without any authority and became possessed themselves.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They tackled an enemy far stronger than they, with no immunity, no authority.
Well, remember in past shows, Father, people have called and said, I have done exorcisms, lay people.
Yeah.
And you have said, yes, it is possible.
It is possible.
But apparently very dangerous.
It's very dangerous, and I don't know with what authority they did it. I do know one Lutheran pastor who has authority from his church and successfully exorcises. It is a very rare thing. You see, the only proof is that the person in question is completely healed. Completely healed. And art, let me tell you, there is no healing more peaceful, more lovely, more joyous, more confident, more human than the healing of somebody by exorcism. It is so beautiful. It's like a sunrise and a calm upland meadow after a devastating hurricane.
Well, the people who would defend the doctor, I'm sure, would say that he did this as a final resort.
Oh, yes, I'm sure.
However, his detractors would say he's the one who put the 126 different personalities into her in the first place.
The reality is something else. And as you know, Art, you're a very well-read man and a studied man in this matter. The whole theory of MPDs, multiple personality disorder,
yes,
is very much, for the psychiatric community, very much up in the air.
Oh, very much. Yes, the suggestion being that under hypnosis, these are induced by by the psychiatrist.
That's right. And we do know nowadays, especially since the end of the Second World War and the transport of Hitler's mind control experts to this country,
yes,
we do know now that programming can be very deep and very effective and can really achieve what... Remember that book, The Manchurian Candidate?
Of course.
It can achieve that, and we do use it.
Father, I want to ask you what they call the big question here that I've worked up. How do you know... Look, Father, I take it you have probably done more exorcisms than anybody else in this country. Is that...
I don't know. I really don't, because it's a very compartmented trade, if I can put it that.
Trade.
Very compartmented profession. You don't communicate. I've just come across a marvelous exorcist who's been functioning in a certain area of the Midwest, and I never knew he existed. It's just we didn't overlap.
Understood.
We never overlap.
So it's not talked about a lot, really.
No, it's not. You don't communicate very much because laws of privacy govern everything in this matter, because nobody who has genuinely been possessed and genuinely been cured ever wants anybody to know about it.
Okay, well, that's really where my question goes. Now, apparently the allegation is this woman had these personalities inserted into her through hypnosis. How do you delineate, how do you know that some of the people that you have not performed exorcisms on are not people who have been victims of this induced MPD?
It's one of the things we have been alerted to from the mid-70s, Art, because we came across very accurate information about the programmers that do exist, that did exist then and do exist today. And we formed criteria, principles by which to judge that. And it's not a simple matter, but it can be done. And more than once, I have dismissed people who applied for exorcism, saying, no, there's no exorcism here at all. Who is your psychiatrist? Or who is your psychologist? Or who is your whatever, your guru, your channeler, or whatever it was?
One would presume that usually prior to coming to somebody like yourself, people would have been to a psychiatrist or two or three.
Usually they come through a psychiatrist, actually. A psychiatrist will write to you and say, dear Fr Martin, dear Dr. Martin, look, I have a patient, blah, 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 blah. And he or she, here's the etiology of it all. Would you have a talk with them?
Without discussing specific cases, Father,
yes.
How many times have you begun to investigate a possible exorcism and then rejected it?
7 out of 10 cases.
7 out of 10?
Yep. Because you see, there's also the question of disease. Some people, for instance, with La Tourette syndrome are used to be confused with possession.
Yes. And
La Tourette syndrome just has a lot of the behaviorisms of possessed people, but it's not possession. And then there's Huntington's chorea. And then there are forms of schizophrenia. phases of schizophrenia. There are schizophrenia, but not possession. And then, by the way, there are forms of possession that are very like schizophrenia, and the demon hides behind the schizophrenic manifestations.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah, it is. There's a double whammy there. So you've got to undo all that. And you can only undo all that if you have authority. You can't just do it because you say, well, okay, now tell me what the truth. Are you there or not? It's nothing like that. It's a far more...
Are you allowed to discuss the tests?
Yes. The tests are if you want to start at the beginning, first of all, you ensure that there's nothing physical, that there isn't a tumor in the brain, there isn't transgenerational insanity, there isn't alcoholism, there isn't a drug addiction. You must assure yourself of all those things. And if there is it masking something else, or is it simply that alone? You've got to, first of all, you must check them physically. They must be checked physically. Because there are always physical manifestations out. And then, having done that, you check them psychologically. Not by psychoanalysis exactly, but competent psychologists must examine them, talk to them, examine them anyway, even if they can't talk to them. Sometimes they refuse to talk. And they must make up their minds if it's some form of psychosis or neurosis or something psychological, or something that's indefinable and that has no explanation in the diagnostic manual for psychiatry. In that case, then, the attitude is, okay, let's try exorcism. And then you start off formally into exorcism. And that means then talking to the person in question or to the people who know them, if it's a child or a young person or a husband or a wife, people who know them, and finding out how they've lived and when it started and what happened and what distresses people, why have they come to you, what has the psychiatrist said. If they come through a psychiatrist, usually the psychiatrist will tell you what he or she has found out about them and say, this is the baffling thing about it, and this is why I would turn to you on a religious plane rather than on a psychoanalytic plane or psychological plane or psychiatric plane. And therefore you eliminate possibilities of disease, physical disease, and you eliminate the possibility of hoax, and you eliminate the possibility of something to do with insanity or psychological irregularity of some kind or other.
Okay, but once all of that is gone, and
then you make an appointment to start your exorcism. And it actually, once you start into something like that formally, having arranged everything in the usual way, and I can describe that in a few sentences to you, within 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you know if you're dealing with possession.
That quick?
Oh, yeah. Because, you see, the power of an exorcist, if he has authority, the power of the exorcist is such that it evokes a response. It evokes a response.
And the battle begins.
The battle begins. If he is skillful, he can be fooled. He can be deceived.
Have you been?
No, but I've assisted at exorcisms when I was younger, where the person was baffled and deceived and outwitted. And I knew it, but I wasn't in charge. And you don't interfere.
Outwitted.
Yeah,
that's
outwitted.
An interesting term.
Yes, it is.
In other words, the strength of your faith alone, even if you have absolute faith, might not be enough. You could still be outwitted.
That's exactly it. You've got it. That's exactly it. You can be outwitted by a cleverer mind and a quicker intellect and a more resourceful intellect and above all a much more ruthless intellect, which also is probably acquainted with you, the exorcist, to a certain extent, and therefore knows your weaknesses and knows what to tap to evoke false judgments.
That's really quite remarkable to consider, because I suppose the purist would suggest that an absolute rock-solid faith would be sufficient, or should be sufficient, with God's power behind you. But actually, there are other aspects, including wit. In other words, that you not be fooled by somebody brighter than yourself.
That's right. Intelligence. There's nothing can beat intelligence when it gets down to brass tacks. A fight like this, because it's a real struggle. And you see, we humans, as such, we are inclined to, not pride exactly, but we're inclined to be very fascinated by some intellectual problem. And we can be lulled into accepting a situation where we fall under the influence of a superior intellect, because usually, not always, but usually the demon has a superior mind compared to ours. Usually.
Well, that really must make you think several times as you go into an exorcism.
It does.
Because it is possible, and it's happened, hasn't it, Father, that exorcists have gone in and haven't come out, they've died.
That's right. They've come out of it and died, or they haven't come out of it and they've died, or they've come out of it possessed, and possessed in a very, very pathetic way. I mean, worn out, useless.
What generally is, when that occurs, what does the church do?
Well, once upon a time, when churchmen, bishops in other words, and the prelates of the church, when they really were in charge of this, because nowadays they're not. A lot of them don't believe in it at all. But when they had a regular system and a method of taking care of this aspect of life, they generally gave them very easy jobs as parish priests or in institutes, to make it easy, because these men, there's no doubt about it, that they lost their lives. So the church took care of them for the rest of their lives. It did. It was very mild and compassionate with them. And today? Today, first of all, there are far fewer exorcists than ever before. In a lot of dioceses, for instance, in Detroit, in the diocese of Detroit, there is no formal exorcist at all. So if you want to have an exorcism in that area, you have to go to the cardinal, is the cardinal in charge, and say, listen, Bishop so-and-so of such and such a diocese has an exorcist. May he come in and do it, because he can't do it in somebody else's diocese unless he has authority and permission. And it becomes very awkward then. Sometimes the bishop says no. Sometimes the bishop says yes. Sometimes the answer is very peculiar. Sometimes a bishop who is not respected very much for his Catholicity is quite willing to experiment. It's very funny. You never know what's going to happen. So it could be in this day and age, Father, that a priest who would perform an exorcism and would come out of it basically a vegetable would not be taken care of by the church. No, would not be taken care of. His family takes care of him, or he goes to a home, or I know one or two who ended up in state farms. It's a grim affair. It's a grim affair nowadays. All right, I've got something I need to ask you about. What's that? I do a lot of different things on the air, sometimes foolish things. I doubt that. I do. No, I do. And I wanted to talk to a witch. A broom riding, I said a broom riding. A broom riding witch. Yeah, the real McCoy, a real witch. Yes. And so I went on a witch hunt. And I found this young lady who calls herself Harlot. And I interviewed this young lady. And turns out she called herself a witch, Father, but what she really was a Satanist. I interviewed her over a period of, about 4 hours or so, and trust me, she was the real McCoy.
She scared me to death, and
it really scared it out of you.
Full of hail Satans and all that kind of thing. And extremely serious. At first, I thought she wasn't serious, but trust me, she was. She was married to a man who killed her daughter. Now, he knew, or she knew, that this was coming, and toward the end of this interview, this 4-hour interview, I was mind blown, and I said, you know, has it occurred to you that you obviously, willingly, are going to go to hell? And she said, yes, I know, I accept that, I look forward to that.
That's right.
I said, but your daughter, your innocent young daughter, who was murdered by your ex-husband, what about her? She won't be with you. And you know what she said? She said, no, you're wrong, because I knew it was coming, and before she was killed, I took steps to ensure she would be in hell with me. And that stopped me cold.
What age was the daughter when she was killed?
I can't remember. It was like 3 or 4. Young.
Yeah. Well, the terrible thing about it, Art, is, a general remark, that children, through their parents, can be made belong to a demon.
They can.
Through their parents. Through their parents.
How can that be, Father? In a world that I guess I don't properly understand.
Yeah, it's difficult to express it. But we have cases. We have frightening cases of it. And by the way, we have also got cases where the parents, Satanist worshippers, Luciferians really,
yes, and
generational Luciferians, that is, the ran in the family, who they tried to do the same to their children and failed. Some children accepted it, some didn't.
Well, that would imply an age of understanding, but...
yes, it's extraordinary, the understanding they have, though, Art. It's frightening. At the age of 3.5, 4. It's astounding in certain cases. In other cases, no, they're dull. They're like little children, which they are, and they don't, there's no harm done. But there are cases,
there's some part of me, Father, that just can't grasp this, that an innocent child could be literally taken to hell by the mother in this case.
Cease to be innocent. Cease to be innocent. You see, actually, when you think of it, there have been cases in history where children of an age, a tender age, as we say, 3 and 4, turned out to be very willful. There are rare cases, I know that. They're very rare cases. But it does happen.
But even under our laws, a child of 3 or 4 could never be charged with...
Never.
Held responsible for in any way...
Never.
What some child at that age would do.
That's right.
So, I'm sure you get this kind of question all the time, but how could a merciful God allow this to occur to a child that young? How could this woman's will make that happen?
I have no answer to that. I do know it happens. I do know that there's full consent on the part of the child. I do know that they have a development of will and mind that frightens you when you come across it. You know you're in the presence of a tiny body which is as developed as your will, your adult will, although not with the experience. And it's a very frightening thing.
Boy, it's a scary
like
world
a
we
talking
live
dog.
in. You know, I sort of half expected you to say, don't worry, that child is not in hell.
Well,
but that isn't what you said.
As to who finally ends up in hell, Art, that is something reserved to God. We don't know. And she, the mother, may have thought she made quite sure about it. She may not have had, because the final decision is not hers, it's God's.
Yes, but your answer is she could have done it.
Oh, yes.
Here once again is Fr Malachi Martin. Father, welcome back.
Thank you.
I've got a really hard question I'm going to ask you, hard for me. But first I want to ask you, in previous programs you and I have done, we have talked not just about people possessed requiring exorcism, but people in a different category, people that you have called perfectly possessed.
Right.
Now, frequently these people are very successful, have a great deal of money and influence and power.
Usually, yeah.
Usually, yes. And there are many of them. And you said when you walk down the street, you know them when you see them.
Yes, you always do. They know you.
They know you.
Yeah.
In what manner would you know this person? Can you put words to it?
No, it's one thing you can't put words to it, but it's the unseen signals. It's like you sense that they sense you are both totally alien to each other. Totally alien to each other.
So you definitely...
It's beyond hate. Sorry, for interrupting you. It's beyond hate, even. It's total alien. Nothing in common at all. And it's not a teeth-gritting, shivering thing. No, it's not. It's. I don't know if ever in your life, Art, you were in imminent danger of being killed, not of dying. A lot of people have, like myself, with a heart attack, two heart attacks, etc. That's of dying, but of being killed. And there were only two times in my life, which we can talk about some other time, and not to be divagate the conversation too much, when I could have been killed.
Killed.
Literally.
Right.
But then when you are in that, when it's certain that unless something happens, you are going to be killed, a strange calm comes over you. Because then it's sure.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't escape.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get out of it. And unless something happens, you're going to be killed, literally. You're not going to die. You're going to be killed. And it's a strange calmness. It's cold reality. And it's beyond the shivering cold. It's just, that's the feeling you have when you recognize them and they recognize you. You know this cold reality, and it's beyond hate. It's total alienation.
Okay, the perfectly possessed person, if I understood correctly your explanation before, is a person who, in fact, has made a pact with the devil.
The ultimate.
To be successful, to get what he wants in the world, whatever reason, maybe even to get a woman. Who knows for what reason he's made a pact with the devil.
That doesn't make him perfectly possessed. It just puts him in possession. Perfect possession is something beyond that even.
But I mean, he's utterly satisfied with his deal.
Completely.
The reason I ask is as follows. I have been in the radio business for 25, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And like many people in radio, for many of the early years, I struggled and, about half starved to death like people do in radio. I mean, that's the way it is.
Of course.
And it's been a passion for me without question.
Great.
And like everybody else, or maybe unlike so many others, I have been very fortunate, and in recent years, my career has just, skyrocketed.
That's right. Thank God.
Thank God. But I've got to tell you, I don't ever recall any time that I said that I'd give anything, I'd give my soul, or anything like that. I don't recall a time like that.
No, I'm sure you didn't.
But since I've had this much success, there have been some times, particularly, I must say, since I heard you describe the perfectly possessed, when I have worried, did I do something mentally? Did I make some pact that I'm not consciously recalling? I worry constantly. It's like...
Yeah. Let me make a remark about that. perfect possession is consequent on a very conscious step, consciously taken step. It's not something that's implicit. To contrast, to make a contrast, we now get young people, 20-somethings or 30-somethings in age, and they do come and say, look, I made a pact with the devil because I needed this job, I needed this woman, I really wanted to marry her, and I wanted to get this job abroad, and I want to get this loan, and
right.
And now I can't get rid of it. That's something else. They were simply very stupid and foolish, and generally they can be helped. And it's a thing they regret. Be perfectly possessed through a certain graduation. It's a gradual thing. It's not suddenly overnight. The devil doesn't appear in the morning with a scroll and say, sign this and your 50 years of happiness, may you come to hell with me. The Faustian picture, Aristophanes.
Yeah, Hollywood.
That's right. And Goethe's play, Faust. It's not that. It's a gradual thing where the person slowly but surely concedes, surrenders their will, every fiber of their will, and therefore of their being, and acquiesce totally in it, and are rewarded by their master, and utterly conscious. There's nothing implicit about it. There's nothing. It isn't slid by them.
You're saying I would know it if that was.
Oh yes, you'd know it a mile away. You'd know it a mile away.
I think that it is a malady suffered by many people who are successful. They don't fully understand the nature of their success, and sometimes it seems like there are other forces at work. In other words, you question your own success, and that's one of the things, ever since talking to you, that I've been worried about.
Actually, you see, there's no doubt about it that the evil around us, because there is evil around us as well as good, does make inroads in us through pride and vanity and desire and ambition and lust, etc. All those things. And those make inroads in us, and that does prick our conscience. There's no doubt about that. But the total surrender and acceptance of Luciferian being, because that's what takes place in the perfectly possessed, that is something that cannot be done implicitly or overnight or by accident or be slipped into your life without you knowing it. Oh, no. No.
I think it's... You struggle, you know, a lot of people are just hearing this show and me for the first time think, an overnight success. Well, I'm an overnight success. It's been at it for about 30 years. of overnights. Nevertheless, though, the real success did come recently in the last couple of years, and it has been absolutely astounding, and I really, really have been worried.
Well, Art, that is, I mean... Look, from my vantage point, looking on the outside in at you, it seems to be the logical progression of a very devoted and intelligent career in radio, and you've reached a culmination. Now, there's this part about it. Nobody achieves the amount of affiliated associates that you have, and the name you've got. Nobody reaches that without a special destiny from Christ, because not everybody does it. And you have a profound influence on millions, and that means that you, from this point of view, as a radio man, that you are working on universal lines that affect the macro government of people's souls. And that's a responsibility. It really is.
I know.
That for me, that's the telling point that, sure, somebody can work like a dog, work the little bottom off, as they say, and not get to where you are. But you got there, and that was because your destiny was that you were to do that. Given your talents and given your will and given the opportunities which were given to you.
Obsession would be a good word. I'm obsessed with what I do. I love it.
Yeah, I know. Well, obsession, since we're talking in the context of exorcism, obsession is a very professional word with us. I wouldn't use it about it at all. I'd say you're utterly devoted, and because obsessed is something else.
Close to possessed, huh?
Yeah. Obsessed in that good sense, yeah. Not even the Calvin Klein meaning obsession. I could make a joke, sort of a joke.
Yes, I could use a joke.
Yes, but I know it's a question of destiny. De facto, your destiny before you were born, before you were conceived, before your parents were married, was such that you would achieve this eminence. And apparently, it fits into God's plan.
Oh, I hope
and I'm not saying that to bury you up, not burying you up at all. I'm loading on your shoulders, broader though they may be, a responsibility that ain't easy, because He will look you straight in the eye, Art, one day when you pass over, and say, "Now tell me, Art, how did you really do?"
I worried all the way.
I
worried all the way. You know, you discussed the responsibility. I worry all the time about the responsibility. As a matter of fact, I don't think that somebody in my position should have as much influence as I can have. It worries me all the time.
I know. Well, I'm sure all the other eminent men in various fields say the same thing. And I without breaking confidences, you speak about me as having worked with 2 popes, and I did, and I've worked with very eminent men, and behind the scenes, the best of them used to shed tears over their weaknesses.
Really?
And over their fears. Yeah. And then straighten the hump on their shoulders, as they say, and march ahead.
That's it, all right. That's it, all right.
Yeah.
Let me read you this from the UK News. This just came in today from the United Kingdom News.
Yeah.
It appears that some of those who have passed over to the spirit world are unwilling to be kept from the pleasures of the flesh. Listen to this. A Blackpool woman called a priest, 2 psychics, and a Mormon missionary to try to rid her of a ghost that she claimed regularly sexually attacked her. The attacks began in 1994 when she felt something climbing into bed with her. She claimed it pulled off the towel she was wearing about her head and said it was going to make love to her. Then she felt a, quote, vile, end quote, sensation, quote, like tiny needles trying to pierce my skin, end quote. What does that sound like to you?
Well, I'll tell you. Coincidentally, I'm dealing with at least 2 cases of people, 1 male, 1 female, who are assaulted, mainly in bed. And the assault is never pleasant, but it is sexual. And there's no doubt about it, there's demonic activity around them, and they've let themselves in for it.
They let themselves in for it?
Yes, they did. They made mistakes, they made errors, and they have to pay for it, and they are paying for it, thank God. And they are doing penance, and they're taking good direction, but they have to liquidate. And though it may sound funny to you, not funny, but it may sound peculiar to you, I keep saying to them, look, it's far better that you liquidate here your guilt than that you do it in purgatory.
How do you liquidate here your
By this, that if in this life you get suffering, either physical and mental suffering.
Yes.
I don't believe there's such thing as physical suffering without mental suffering. But anyway, if you do that, and you have the grace of God, and you offer it up in union, but this is Catholicism, in union with the pains of Jesus, the Savior, whose pains did save us, then you do merit to liquidate the punishment due to your sins.
Penance, actual suffering, mental and physical.
That's why when you haven't got pains and aches, For instance, I've normally got a very healthy body, so if I want to do penance, I've got to fast. You have to devise means of not hurting yourself, but depriving yourself of creaturely comforts, which are perfectly legitimate. Because Christ himself said, these demons are cast out only by prayer and fasting. And it is a tradition in Christianity, and by the way, in Islam too, and in Judaism, but we're talking about Christians, about Catholicism in particular, it is their tradition that by fasting and by doing penance, you do get rid of demonic influence, and you do also do penance for your sins. And there's no doubt about it that if you have a horrible cancer, say a multilocal cancer, in your skull,
yes,
your brain, and you suffer the pains of it,
yes,
you can liquidate whatever guilt is due to sins, even though the sins themselves are forgiven. There's always some punishment due to it. That's the doctrine of Catholicism, and it was lost in the Reformation.
And yet, Father, people come down with these horrible cancers that give them horrible deaths all the time, and it sometimes it seems like the very best people die early, such terrible deaths.
I know. I see it every week of my life.
So then, how does that fit in?
Well, it fits in the sense that, of course, each one is different. Each person is different, and I've never found two patients reacting in the same way. But it's always a question of how they will take it, as the will of God or as simply an affliction, and they count it as a curse, and they can count it as a hidden blessing.
Father, we are once again at the bottom of the hour, so just rest a moment. It just flies by, doesn't it? Father Malachi Martin is my guest from Manhattan. And, Father, I have interviewed many people who claim to do past life regressions.
Yes.
I have interviewed many New Age types who claim that they have had near-death experiences, that there is no such thing as hell, that nobody ever goes to hell, and that in all of their regressions and the thousands of regressions they've done, they've never encountered hell. Well, let me tell you, I've got an article here from the London Telegraph, and I want to read you a little bit about it and ask you about it. Quoting, terrifying accounts of gravely ill people who claim to have been dragged to the very gates of hell by demons are now to be studied scientifically for the first time by a British psychologist. The existence of so-called near-death experiences, or NDEs, in which dying people report having mystical sensations before being resuscitated, is now widely accepted by doctors and scientists. Their cause is unknown, but they typically involve a feeling of deep peace, followed by a sensation of floating up through a tunnel toward a bright light and into a beautiful kingdom. We've all heard that. Continuing, but now it is becoming clear that for some people, NDEs are far from blissful. Instead of a feeling of floating upwards, they report being pulled downward toward a pit inhabited by demons. The experiences of Evelyn Hazel, a London-based art historian, as she fought for life against meningitis, are typical. Quote, I had reached a critical stage in the illness, and I was hovering between life and death. I was aware of being involved in an intense and very real struggle for my life. She told the Telegraph, continuing the quote, a three-legged being, rather like the Isle of Man symbol, was pulling both my legs down to infinite depths, and I knew, without any doubt, that if I relaxed and I gave in, I would be dead. I believe this struggle went on for some considerable time, and eventually I managed to break away from whatever it was pulling me down. And so they're doing actual scientific studies now, not on the typical light and light beings and relatives greeting you in tunnel stories,
yes,
but on people who went the other way. Hell is a real place?
Yes, a real place, in the sense that it is a place. has every place has a where. You know, if you say Peru, it's a real place. You say, where is it? It's got a real location, a real where. We do not know the exact location of hell.
Oh, I didn't mean a geographic location, Father.
Okay. No, it has a real. It's a real place. Yes, it is.
We don't know the geographic location of heaven either.
No, we don't. We don't. That's a distinct thing.
But I guess my question is, hell is as real a place as heaven?
Yes, as real. As real. And so is purgatory. In between. It's as real. Now, it is impossible to deny the fact, because so many people have had near-death experiences, NDEs,
right,
of both kinds. It is impossible. We can't explain it exactly, but it is there. It does take place. And the similarity between the NDEs is amazing. It does point to some unity caused by one thing, one particular experience that they all have had. And the demonic also. The big difference, Father, is that people who have had an experience like this lady don't talk about it. They don't talk about it. I mean, sure, if you go to a place of light and love and you realize that you would be in heaven if you really pass on, fine, you can talk about that. Yeah. But if you've been to hell, you're not really likely to... You don't come back and tell us about it. Not really. Unless you come back. There have been cases of possession where damned souls do speak. Where damned souls speak? Yeah, do speak through the demon. But that's a question of... There are very, very peculiar cases, and they're very convoluted cases, and there are cases where people made special pacts with the demon. But they're very rare, but they do come back. At least they're allowed to talk, communicate, I should say. It's all very mysterious, and you stay away from it as much as possible as an exorcist. But it does come through at times, and it's a very disturbing experience, and it never leaves you. Well, I would imagine a lot of priests have, even themselves, in their lives, moments of doubt about their own... Very many. Yeah. You're absolutely correct. I would think, though, that doing what you have done, doing exorcisms, must enforce your own faith in a way that the average priest will never have enforced. That's right. That's right. It does. It does. There's no guarantee that you're going to succeed completely and persevere and go to heaven, but there's no doubt about it. It does reinforce it because you're up against it. You're up against the ultimate in evil. And the central experience for any exorcist who has done exorcisms, even one exorcism, but anyway, exorcisms in general, is this. It is that memory burnt into you of total malice. Total malice. And it's very hard for the normal, even hardened criminals. They love somebody, their child, or their woman, or their mother, or their country. But to come across a mind which is total malice, nothing but malice, is something appalling. As I say, what it does to you is it freezes you. I'm sure it does. It freezes. And that is something which... does make you immediately think of God's beauty and God's compassion and God's love and of nice soft things and of eternal peace and compassion and holiness and goodness. It certainly confirms all that. It sends your soul into a wild dance towards God. Well, I would imagine you've had lots of opportunities to see young priests assist you in exorcisms, and how do they come out of that generally, first time around? First time around, they come out shaken, and they generally vomit, and sometimes they're incontinent, They can't keep it in them.
Yes.
It's little they're frightened out of their lives. We laugh because it's embarrassing. In fact, the first time I assisted an exorcism in the United States, I was in bed and was called up by an exorcist who said, "Malachi, my assistant has collapsed. Please come over and help me out." It was in the Bronx.
In the Bronx?
Yep. And the young man had collapsed because it's very unnerving in the beginning. It's very unnerving.
This is probably a very frivolous question, but I'm curious. Having done so many exorcisms, is there any geographic sense to exorcisms in the sense of more, for example, in the large cities? I mean, there you are in New York City, is the biggest. Are there more by percentage, do you think, in the big cities than there are in the...
I'm sure that it will not meet with the approval of a lot of people, but I can pinpoint various cities and various areas in the USA,
Really?
Canada, and in Europe where
there are a disproportionate number?
A disproportionate number, where evil of that kind flourishes. It's a funny thing.
Can you name a few? I mean, we're not going to really harm anybody by naming a few.
Well, I think, for instance, that there's a plethora of such things in Geneva, Switzerland.
Geneva?
Geneva, Switzerland.
Neutral Geneva?
Neutral Geneva. Yeah. I think that, and I hope that we don't get assaulted for having said this, but it does seem that Louisville, Kentucky, has a fair share, more than, say, as far as we know, Santa Fe. And then there are areas in Manhattan where I wouldn't want to live, and they're not always in Avenue A, B, and C, or in the Bronx, for that matter. There are areas, there's no doubt about that, because the presence of evil entertained and accepted and wished and blessed and celebrated means that you have diabolic presence, demonic presence. That's all about it.
I live right over a mountain from Las Vegas. Now, Las Vegas is always generally portrayed in the media and elsewhere as the devil's playground.
Yeah, I think, that's romanticizing. I never, in my whole experience, Las Vegas never stood out as a home of the devil's art.
No kidding. So in other words, it doesn't even stack up against Louisville.
No, it doesn't stack up against Louisville. It doesn't stack up against Chicago. It doesn't stack up against Vancouver.
Wait a minute. Vancouver, you say?
Yes. Doesn't stack up at all. But it's talking about the incidence of diabolic interference. It just doesn't.
So there really are. Do you have any thoughts on why there are hotspots like this?
I do not know. And a few years ago, more than a few, back in the 70s, we tried to create a profile of the possessible person.
Sure.
And the profile of the places. But we found out there was no profile. No, it was purely random. Neither education, nor sex, nor faith, nor culture, nor riches, nor poorness, poverty or riches, success or failure, black, white or sky blue, pink, yellow or red or green, whatever the color of your skin was.
So then possession is random?
It appears to be random.
Hello.
Where are you, please?
My name is Alex, and I'm calling from El Paso, Texas.
Yes, Alex.
Okay.
Yes, Father Martin, I have a feeling that a good friend of mine his son, I think, may be possessed.
Ah.
And what he does is he draws very, very strange drawings on his wall, and he talks to them. He draws very, very ugly pictures of certain strange things. And I have now, I may sound like kind of crazy by saying this.
No, you don't sound crazy at all. What age is the boy?
He's about 10.
Ah.
And, you know, when kids are about 10, you know how they have, like, invisible play friends and stuff
Sure.
like that. But, I have a strange feeling that God is telling me to, like, kind of help this boy.
Yes,
And I don't really, like, know whether to, like, you know, get, like, some sort of help on exorcism or anything like that.
Yeah, I do not know the bishop down there, if there's an official exorcist in that diocese of El Paso, in which El Paso is. Tell me, do you know anything else about the boy? Does he
He bends himself like kind of strange.
Does he speak about a companion?
Well, he tells me that he's talking to the person on the wall.
Yeah.
And he draws these
Yeah.
figures.
In other words, he could have a familiar, as they call it.
I'm not too sure about those familiar, but...
Yeah, well, they call it a familiar.
Mm-hmm.
But I, at this distance, it's impossible to say. But the peculiar drawing is funny. Does his father ever bring him to a psychologist? It's just...
No, actually the father just kind of like blows it off and says, hey, you know, it's just my son doing strange things, you know, but...
Oh, gee whiz, that's a bit
I kind of have a feeling that, you know, maybe I should get someone, or if not myself, get someone to exorcise him. So where would
Well, you'd have to apply to the local diocese.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this distance, it's the jurisdiction of the bishop in which El Paso is. I don't know what diocese El Paso is in. It's in a Texan diocese, Texas diocese. I don't know which one. But then you go to the chancery and ask who is the exorcist in that diocese.
Would it be possible?
If the father agrees, because the father must agree.
So there you are. Father, what chance in this modern day and age in America does somebody have of going to a diocese and getting an affirmative answer that there is an exorcist?
Very well. Put it in percentiles, about 33%.
33%.
About a third. It's very low.
And if they don't get satisfaction, then what?
Wow. If they don't get satisfaction...
Yeah, if they're laughed off or shrugged off or whatever.
The reason I groan is that I know so many cases of that. I know so many cases where they're laughed off or brushed off or told to go away or simply told us, no, go to a psychiatrist, you know. And that's what has happened within the church organization of my Roman Catholic Church. If our friend who's speaking to us from El Paso, he should pray about it, because prayer can obtain what this boy needs. But I have no solution. At this distance, Art, I have no solution. I see the poignancy of it all and the danger, and that father is very feckless.
Father, could you become a bishop?
Of course I could.
If you were to become a bishop with the power ascendant,
yes,
what would you try to change? What would you try to do with that increased responsibility?
I would try and organize the clerical reaction to possession and obsession, because these are factors that are growing in every diocese I know in the United States.
So we should not be offering less to people like that man who called, but more.
No, on the contrary. He should be aided immediately. There should be a mechanism in each diocese that aids such a thing, takes it in, studies it, gets to the boy, gets to the father. But there isn't. And that's the triumph of Luciferianism. The clergy themselves. As
the grayness descends.
Yeah. And terrible thing is that you won't find a belief in it all amongst many bishops and many priests.
Mm-hmm. Does the fact that you just said that make it less likely that you would become a bishop?
No, it doesn't. It depends on the will of those who make bishops. But anyway, it is pathetic art. It really is pathetic. Even in this archdiocese of New York, there are people who need attention, but they don't get it. Because there's just too much to be done.
I understand. First time caller line, you're on the air with Fr Malachi Martin in Manhattan. Hello. I can barely hear you.
Yes, my name is Keith.
I can barely hear them too.
Yeah, you're going to have to yell at us, sir.
Okay, my name is Keith.
Yes, Keith.
Yes, Keith.
I'm calling from Carbondale, Illinois.
Okay.
Yes.
I was just calling in concern with something that you talked about earlier in the show, the lady named Harlot.
Oh, yes.
And I was just thinking about it. I do a paper route at night, and I just got off of it to try to get a hold of you. And you seemed kind of concerned, and it hit me that most likely the daughter would be in heaven. And the reason I say this is because if the woman desired her to be in hell with her, and hell is supposed to be a damnation, then she wouldn't be able to have that with her. I mean,
but sir, she said, if you listened carefully to that program, she didn't say that she willed her to be in hell with her. She said she took steps before her daughter was killed to ensure that she would be in hell with her.
It's as if she desired that to be.
Of course.
It was beyond desire. She said she took steps.
Right, and what I'm saying is that she would be getting one of her desires fulfilled if God were to enact the child to damnation.
Yes, but you really are missing something, though. She actually took steps, and what I asked Father Martin a while ago was whether, and I have no idea what those steps are, but whether it would be possible that in fact she could have done that, and the answer was yes.
It's feasible. It's feasible. The case, it's an extraordinary thing. The genuine Luciferians and Satanists you meet, they look forward to hell.
She did. She absolutely did. It was one of the most unnerving interviews I've ever done my whole life.
They really do.
Father, we're at the top of the hour. Are you good for one last hour?
Certainly.
Well, there's lots of people awaiting, so we will do it. All right, back now to Manhattan and Fr Malachi Martin, and Father will try and lay heavily into the phones.
Yeah, sure.
But I do have a couple of quick questions by fax.
Yeah.
One, have you, Father, ever had an exorcised demon come back to haunt you?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, I'm glad they asked, because I never would have thought to ask, and I never would have expected that answer. Can you tell us at all?
Yes. It's very harrowing, and resulted in bodily injury, grievous bodily injury. But we were able to deal with it, but it took a lot of work, and it involved a lot of physical pain. A lot of physical pain for a whole year.
For a year?
A year, yeah. The damage.
Oof. Fine. You're on the air with Fr Malachi Martin. Good morning.
Hello, this is Ken from Steubenville, Ohio.
Hi, Ken.
Yes, Ken.
Praise God, I finally got through to you, Bell, after trying for months.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I'd like to confirm two things and then ask a question for Father Martin.
Mm-hmm.
A, yes, once you've been demonized or bothered, getting rid of it is the greatest thing in the world. Yes, they do try to come back and bother you. I know, I had death delivered off of me.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, I have a question for Father Martin about, is it possible that a person could be born and have a curse put on them for the rest of their life, whereas like a cloud of doom is always over them?
Interesting question.
Yes. The only way I can translate it into reality is that in certain families, possession is intergenerational.
Right.
All right, the reason why I asked that question is last year my mother died of cancer. And we had to bring her home to die. And I knew of well, she said she made a deal with God, and I knew what it was. It was a pact. And she didn't die in peace until I prayed over her, anointed her, and broke the pact with the devil.
Yep, that can be done.
I know. I've done your type of work, and I understand the seriousness of it. So as far as this curse goes, I've had many people pray over me, but nobody could really put the finger on why.
Are you one of the people who has the black cloud over his head all the time?
Yes.
All right, Father, that really is an interesting question. Your answer was affirmative, that there can be such a, I don't know if curse is the right word.
No, curse is not, it's a way of saying it, but it's an intergenerational obsession, really. In his case, because he's not possessed. It doesn't sound like it anyway. It
seems so cosmically unfair. If there is no such, I listen to and I interview people who believe fervently in reincarnation.
Yes, yes.
And they will forward the theory of karmic work-off, that from one lifetime to another.
Yeah.
But if there is not that, and that we all begin roughly equally, it just doesn't seem fair.
Well, sometimes we don't all begin equally. That's the difficulty. And see, there's one peculiarity God has, and it's this, that as the prophet Hosea said, the fathers eat sour grapes and the children's teeth are blunt. Take, for instance, Adam and Eve. I wasn't in the garden.
True.
I didn't eat the apple.
True, but you nevertheless suffer.
I suffer from that. That's God. If I am a child born of a mother who's a lush and a father who's a crack addict,
yes,
most probably I'm going to be an alcoholic, and I'm going to be crack addicted from the moment I see the light. Why? This way God has arranged humanity. And if I have a parent who rears me to be the servant of Lucifer, and I know families that do that.
Oh, yes.
God doesn't step in and send an angel and tell me to stop. I've got to deal with it. And if there's anything like an intergenerational obsession in man's family, then he has to deal with it.
All right. Wow.
Yes. Hello, Art.
Hi. Where are you?
In California. This is Daphne.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing Father Malachi on. Hi, Father Malachi.
Hi there, ma'am. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
What's on your mind?
Pardon me?
What's on your mind?
I have two questions, if I can.
Sure.
The first one deals with, I was born into an intergenerational satanic cult. And my father was the high priest.
Yeah.
I was, at my birth, my soul was given to Satan by my parents.
Yes.
And so my first question is, how can I be released from that?
Very simple, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Provided you are baptized.
Yes.
And that you go to confession, Holy Communion, and Mass. You should, on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, which is just in a couple of days' time, you should consecrate yourself to Our Lady.
Okay. I did denounce Satan. Is it as simple as that?
It's as simple as that.
Okay.
If you need anything further, you could write to me about it.
Okay.
But that's all that's necessary, really.
Okay, and thank you. My second question is, as a result of the experiences that I had with this cult, I developed multiple personalities, so this whole evening's program is very interesting to me.
Yes.
I was highly programmed by the cult, and I've been in therapy for many years. Along with all the personalities are 9 demons. They're not part of my personalities, but they're separate.
Yes.
My pastors are preparing to do deliverance. I'm not Catholic. We did go to a Catholic church and asked the priest, and he really did not believe in that. He didn't take it seriously. So my pastors are preparing to do this in a few weeks, and I'm wondering if you have any suggestions for them, or is there a way they can reach you by phone?
Write me a short note to the following address, 217 East 66th Street, apartment 2A for Apple, New York, New York, 10021.
Okay. And does that come directly to you? Or
yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously that's an apartment address. It goes right to him.
Yes, tell me your first name so I will identify it.
On the envelope?
No,
just in the letter.
Tell me.
Daphne.
What is your first name?
Daphne.
Daphne.
Daphne, okay, I've got it. That's enough.
All right, Daphne, do that then. Father,
yes.
That is an amazing thing to hear. She was given to the devil at birth.
Oh, yes, but you have no idea how common this is.
Well, that was where I was going. In America, in Canada, in the Americas, even worldwide, Father, how much of that is there really going on?
Or put it like this. It's going on, I don't know, one country in which it is not going on. I don't know one, because there's a very private Vatican report about this, which we don't divulge, but it gives the indications that there isn't one country in which this doesn't take place.
Is there arguably more of it going on, or?
Yes. There's arguably more going on today than ever any records indicate.
That's
the records we have. And the records are very good. They're very detailed. But arguably there's much more today, and in the last 50 years, the second half of this century has been a bumper crop.
So that really at the very moment in history, a critical moment, when the church ought to be going in the direction that you would have it go, it's going exactly the other way.
That's right. The organization, not the church itself, because that's a sacred thing. It's composed of all those in the state of grace who belong to our Lord and to God. But the organization itself is in shambles.
Shambles.
In shambles, and is to a large extent dominated by Lucifer.
Dominated by Lucifer. East of the Rockies, you're on there with Father Malachi Martin. Hello.
Hello.
Where are you, sir?
Erie, Pennsylvania.
Erie, okay.
Wow. I didn't really expect to get on. I could ask questions for hours, too, but however, I'll just try to cut down to like 3. I want to ask Art one question.
Yes.
Art, why do you divide your callers between on the Rocky Mountains? I would have thought the Mississippi River would have been a more central location.
Well, maybe we'll change that one day. It's just something we did because we began in the West, and we had so many people in the far West that were listening to the show when it first became syndicated that we wanted to give everybody east of the Rockies an opportunity to get in, and the show has grown, obviously, since then, so maybe we'll change that.
I see.
Anyway.
Okay, and a question for your guest. Okay, I tell people that seem to go crazy and just shoot people for no reason. You know, like just recently somebody shot a bunch of kids at the
Paducah, Kentucky.
Right.
Kentucky.
Right. And I tell them, well, there's no real reason for this. These people must be possessed. You're probably the only person I could talk to that would agree with me. Do you think that at least a percentage of these people are actually possessed or obsessed, or is it just normal human evil?
No. I'm convinced that in a case like the Paducah thing, it's a demonic origin.
It was a prayer group.
Yep.
A prayer group. And this young fellow was warning people ahead of time that something horrible was going to happen. He actually warned them, and then went ahead and did it. It's as I said earlier, indecipherable. So you believe that there is very possibly, real evil involved?
Yes, and the difficulty the normal public have is this: that, for instance, in New York, when something takes place, something horrid, something bloody, something murderous, And Satanism, as they call it, as a general term, involves the police will not tell that to the public. They have a rule. They have a rule.
Then I must ask you this, Father. This, in the Paducah case, of course, was a 14-year-old child, and this child will be no doubt charged as a juvenile at 14. But
yes.
if this was an older person,
yes.
then how many people do you suppose, Father, go to the electric chair or are ultimately punished, receive capital punishment for something that is of demonic origin rather than human origin?
That's difficult to answer. I know that when we did a survey of prisons, lifers, and people confined for 30, 35, 40 years for horrible crimes, a good one-third of them were obviously possessed.
A good one-third?
Yeah, at least one-third as a general ballpark figure.
One-third. All right, Father, hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour once again. Still there?
Yes, sir.
Well, okay, we're in the stretch run. It really is amazing how time goes.
It runs away, Art. It runs away.
Yes, sir. First time caller line, you're on the air with a guy who runs away with time. Father Martin, hi.
Hi, this is Paul in Denver.
Hello,
Hi,
Paul.
Father Martin, I have two short related questions.
Sir.
Concerning your comments about hypnosis.
Yes.
If someone is pursuing or is not pursuing metaphysical goals or satanic goals,
yes.
is hypnosis in general or self-hypnosis in particular dangerous? I know many people use self-hypnosis for self-improvement kinds of purposes, and I just ask, is that dangerous?
No, of itself, no, it isn't, but it should be under the supervision of some good psychiatrist.
I see. And then the last kind of related question is, how is a self-hypnosis different, or maybe it's the same, as an affirmative prayer?
Because the self-hypnosis is really relying upon your own inner powers of concentration and self-control. Whereas prayer, genuine prayer, depends on a special gift from God.
I see.
At the moment of prayer.
They are
a distinct thing.
They are, Father, presently doing studies on the power of prayer, actual scientific studies, and it would appear to be absolutely scientifically verifiable that prayer actually works.
Yeah, it does. It works. There's no doubt about that. And the question that Paul just gave us is very interesting.
Yes.
What is the difference between self-hypnosis?
Precisely.
Because actually you can be taught by a very well instructed psychiatrist. They can teach you to hypnotize yourself so that you go to sleep, so that you recover from weariness. So that you know. But how does that differ from prayer? In the sense, it differs in one sense, one essential sense, that prayer, it is genuine prayer, and if it's heard, which it normally is by a good God, then it means you get extra help, spiritual help, supernatural help, and that's distinct from your own inner powers.
Wildcard line, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hi.
Hi, it's Tom in Reno.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Father Martin, it's a distinct honor to speak with you.
That's very nice of you to say that, Tom.
Thank you. I was wondering if you were familiar with Edgar Cayce.
Yes, I am.
And
with his works, I never knew the man himself.
Okay. And you knew that he was an extremely religious person.
Extremely.
How do you reconcile his writings about past lives and that sort of thing?
I'll tell you, Tom, there's no doubt about it. Two things are clear about Edgar Cayce. First of all, he had extraordinary middle plateau powers. That is, psychic gifts. Extraordinary.
Yes.
Quite extraordinary. There's at least one doctor in New Jersey today that still uses his formulae for various afflictions and diseases. And he did this without any medical instruction as such. He had extraordinary perceptions in that sense. An extraordinary perception. He just had it, and it came to him. It was a psychic gift. On the other hand, he did make egregious errors intellectualizing his condition. He fell into various sort of illusions about God and about life and death and the hereafter. And that part, if you were wise, if you take my advice, you'd drop any teachings he has about that. But there's no doubt about it. I know a person, a lady, a woman whose sight was saved because she went to a doctor in New Jersey who used Casey's formula.
He did have some amazing
formulas
that he came up with.
Utterly amazing. And it was a gift, there's no doubt about it. Now look, I knew a few people in Ireland, the old Ireland I was born in the 1920s and 30s, who had extraordinary gifts too of curing, healing by touch, and who also could tell you what's going to happen to you on the morrow. These gifts, and I've met them in various parts of the world I've lived in, but never so much in my youth in Ireland when life was much simpler. These gifts exist, there's no doubt. Edmund Casey is an outstanding example of extraordinary psychic gifts.
Definitely great gifts from God, I would say.
Obviously. Anything good comes from God.
Okay, I have one more question if I could.
All right, one more quick one.
Okay, I wondered if you think it's possible that you could be wrong about past lives and reincarnation.
All right, there's a straight-out question.
Well, no, I don't think there's such a thing as reincarnation. I just don't believe it, because my church condemns it, and my reason doesn't accept it. Now, that I can be wrong, one can always be wrong, Tom, you know what I mean? But on this point, since it's a matter of faith, I prefer to say no, I'm not wrong, I'm following the truth as revealed. That's because I'm a Roman Catholic.
Fair enough. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Fr Malachi Martin. Where are you, please?
Hello?
Hello there.
Hi, I'm in Brand, Manitoba, Canada.
All right.
I had a question for Father Martin.
Yes, sir.
Hi, have you ever heard of the house in Amityville, New York?
Yes, I have. I've been to it.
You have? Really?
Yes.
Are the people living there right now?
For a long time there weren't. There may be people there now.
I just wondered if you had any information on the person, on the son who did the deed in that house, and what he's doing now.
No, I don't know what he's doing. I wish I did.
Oh, really?
I have no means of following that up because he doesn't want much notice.
Mm-hmm.
He's got enough notice about it all.
Is it true about the well in that house?
Yes.
Is that true?
The Amityville horror was really a horror. It really was. But there are just as bad and worse to be found.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. The Amityville horror was real.
Oh, yeah. It was real. It was genuinely gruesome and real. And, yeah, it was very unpleasant.
Do you think that whatever was there is still there?
I'd be inclined to think it is there because it was never properly cleansed.
Well, I'll be doggone if I'd move into that house.
Neither would I. I'd be doggone too. No, I wouldn't move into a place like that at all.
West of the Rockies, you're on there with Father Malachi Martin. Hello.
Good morning, Father. I have something that has been bothering me for about a month and a half now.
Yes, sir.
And it occurred when I was in bed laying on my side.
Yes.
And I was tapped on the shoulder.
Yes.
And I turned my head up over towards the bottom of the bed, and there was a big, dark entity there.
Yes.
And he was grabbing me at my feet and trying to pull me.
Is this the first time this happened to you?
Yes.
How long did it last?
It lasted, it seemed like, for 20 seconds.
Has it occurred again?
No, it hasn't.
Okay. Do you practice any religion?
No, I don't.
Well, I'll tell you, might be a good idea to pray, because I don't think you were drunk.
No, I was not.
No, I'm sure you weren't. I say that. I don't think you were. You sound very sober in mind, in judgment. Then this is what we call an obsessional harassment. It's probably a great mercy that it's done to you, because it may wake your soul to worship God.
I do believe in Jesus Christ, and
good.
But this has been extremely bothersome of myself.
It should be. I'll tell you. Have you got a pencil?
Yes, I do.
Write down.
Go ahead.
O creature of God. In the name of God who created you,
okay,
and in the name of Jesus who saved me, I exorcise you. Now, drop all fear. You have nothing to be afraid of.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
those words in its eye. Okay?
Thank you very much, Father.
God bless.
Good luck. You're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hello.
Yes. Father, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
In college, a friend of mine and I befriended a third guy in one of our classes, and we became friends, and he revealed to us at a later time that he was dealing in the black arts. And because of this, the friendship broke off.
Did you deal in it?
No, I didn't.
Good.
But we had some carryover, if you will. We were visited by things that weren't very pretty, and
that's right. There was we called that infection.
Okay. Well, that we had, and we dealt with it, and we confronted him about it, and he didn't believe that it was possible. He thought he was in control of these demons and such.
That's the usual persuasion.
Right. We tried to convince him to get out of it, and he believes that he can't. And he believes that there's a hell waiting for him, and that there's sort of at this point nothing he can do about it. Now, we don't have...
That's not true.
Excuse me?
That's not true.
Well, I don't believe so either.
Yeah.
But we don't have communication with him anymore.
Oh, Lord.
But,
pray for him.
Yes. Is there... I do that. Is there anything specific I can do?
Beyond reaching him and getting him to go and see somebody in authority who can influence, help him, deliver him, heal him, no, except prayer.
Okay.
But you can pray for him.
Okay.
And it can move mountains. It really can.
Okay.
But throw in a little fasting and penance.
Fasting and penance, okay.
Yeah. Throw in a little of that on your own bat.
Okay.
For his sake. Try and get to him, though.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
You take... Father Martin, welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Art, and how are you?
I am very well. Better than the news. I want to tackle right away, Father, a couple of breaking kind of news stories. One, I started getting messages that an exorcist, one that you may know, was very brutally murdered in America. What do you know about that, Father?
Yes, the man we're both thinking of, his name was Alfred Kuntz, and he was a parish priest in Dane, which is a parish in Ohio, in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, all right.
In Wisconsin, and he was found at 7 o'clock in the morning with his throat cut from ear to ear.
His throat cut?
Yeah, from ear to ear, in his own blood, face down into it, and with obviously various acts of desecration of his body, which are normally associated with Satanist-inflicted death. Father Kunz, of course, and by the way, he was a very popular parish priest with his people. He had done exorcisms, but very, very private. Most of us don't talk about them because they usually involve confessional material, and Father Kunz was a very good priest and never spoke about confessional material.
Had he been in communication with you?
Yes, we had been in communication.
Do you know offhand if he was doing anything at the time? I'm sure the police are probably asking about this, but I mean, it's an obvious question.
They are, and they are refusing to give any of the more lurid details of the mode of his death, for the simple reason that they don't want to. They suspect it's somebody within his vicinity, not a stranger. And there are only, I think, a couple of hundred people. Well, no, about 700, 800 people involved. There's certainly it's not a random act of violence, somebody who wanted to steal or was caught in the act of stealing and simply flailed out. They're convinced it wasn't a random act like that, that was a deliberately set up thing, and that at least one person was involved in it, perhaps more. Kunz himself had just been doing radio shows with a priest friend whom we all know very much, Father Fiore, and they returned home late at night, late being about 10 o'clock in the evening, and we know that he was alive at 10:30 because he made a telephone call or received a telephone call, I forget which, but then the following morning at 7 o'clock, a young man who came to assist him at Mass, etc., found him lying, as I said, in his own blood, with this very, very sinister mode of death etched on his body. There's no doubt about it that it is related. Whether it's related to his very confidential activity as a priest in regards to covens of warlocks in neighboring areas, we may never know. We may never know. We may never know because, number one, the police have a habit in this country that whenever there's, and it's a good habit on the whole, whenever there is any real Satanist activity of a shocking kind, they don't publish the details that indicate the Satanist connection. They just they publish the bare details of a murder.
Why do you think that, Father?
Well, it's also, you're asking me why I think it's a good idea in general, because it doesn't evoke the copycat syndrome. These things do, because about 200 years ago, they stopped doing exorcisms in public, precisely because it evoked the copycat syndrome in people, imitators.
Well, you have told me many times, since you have done so many exorcisms, that there is real, very serious, very real danger. Is it not possible? It's got to be possible that that in his work, in some way, in the middle of some exorcism, or as part of an ongoing one, or you know, who knows?
I have no doubt about the answer to your question. I can foresee and interpret is no doubt about it. The death was not random. It was not an act of personal vengeance, somebody who got annoyed at him for some particular thing. It was in connection with his work as a priest and in the area of demonic possession.
Father, have you ever been concerned at that level? Have you ever, without being specific, because I know you can't about specific exorcisms, but have you ever been concerned for yourself in,
yes, very
same way?
Very, very same way. But you learn after a certain time to take that added risk, and you take precautions. But yes, surely, and at times the menace or the threat is more patent, more obvious than at other times. Sure. and sometimes it's quite voluble, it's quite expressive. You're warned, and more than one good priest in that part of the world, especially one or two very prominent ones, got telephone calls pointing out that they would go the same way.
Oh?
Yes, and one of them actually had to hire a bodyguard, or was given a bodyguard by the police because of his prominence.
Well, you've been a very prominent exorcist. Have you received threats?
Oh, yes, in the past, yes. Not recently, but in the past, yes, very much.
Not as part of this or connected?
No, not part of this, because I wasn't in any way related to this. And as one person told me, sort of happily, because we don't belong to an umbrella organization, exorcists, in other words, those engaged in this area, because we don't belong to an umbrella organization, they can't identify every one of us and therefore pick us off. But they do, we are picked off, all right, there's no doubt about that. And they're not the first, Father Kunz is not the first priest who's picked off as a priest, and as somebody who blocked or interfered with or spoiled Luciferian plans. There's no doubt about that.
Well, the fact that he is now dead would tell me that Luciferian plans are somehow still underway in whatever case.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are.
Is evil in America, evil in the world, increasing?
Well, the only way I can answer that question without sort of sensationalism, Art, is as follows, that since 1972 or 3, when the group I am associated with started, and it's a very quiet, discreet group, but since then, incidences and types of demonic assault have increased. First of all, the increase has been about 750% since that time.
750%.
About 750, judging by figures. And this is in the northeast corner of America, the tri-state area essentially, although it takes in outlying areas too. But then the types of possession, we have now the two phenomena that are very interesting. We have the phenomenon of the 20-something or 30-something that comes and says, look, Father, I wanted such and such a job, or I wanted to get this particular woman. I wanted to make this marriage.
Yes.
I wanted this money. And I made a pact with Satan, with the devil, and I got it. And now he won't let go of me. This didn't occur before, in my experience, in the limited experience I had. And secondly, then there's the...
This is how recent, this phenomenon, how recent?
The last 10 years.
The last 10 years.
Last 10 years. And then there is also the second form, which is a bit off-putting, to put it mildly, that we now find the age is younger. We find children, those we would technically call children, 6 years old, who are obviously not merely obsessed, but on their way to full possession.
There was a recent case in Arkansas that I'm sure you heard of, in which a couple of young fellows decided they were going to kill their classmates and teachers and pulled a fire alarm.
Yes.
And brought rifles and lots of ammunition and simply started shooting students and teachers.
That's right.
Just started shooting.
That's right. I wish I knew the details of that case, but again, the police are singing mum, as they say. They're saying nothing about the details, and there's a great protectiveness web wove around those young,
of course, yes, juveniles, yes.
Juveniles, but we don't know the details of it at all.
An awful lot of that going on, if that corroborates what you were saying.
There is, and there's much more than is reported in public by the media. And in several states, there's an agreement, sort of an unwritten agreement between the police and the governor. There's an unwritten agreement that no details will ever be published without formal permission by the media or by the police of any obviously Satanist or Luciferian happening.
Well, I understand that on the one hand with regard to the possibility of copycat crimes. However, if this really is on the increase in America now, shouldn't we know about it?
Yes, I think we should. The incidences, it's more frequent as far as the incidence of it. And if you drew a graph, you'd find an increase of over 700% since the early 1970s.
Now, who keeps track of that? Are you the one?
We do in this northeast corner of the United States. That's where I'm only talking about that too, and I could make oblique references, but they'd be anecdotally, as regards evidence, to other parts of the country.
But you're sure of what you're saying with regard to the Northeast?
Yes, I'm unfortunately rather sure of that. And what has come to light is that it is not so surprising for a lot of people that there are covens amongst the very educated class, architects, doctors, lawyers, priests, brokers, and the leisure class.
These are people who have made pacts with the devil.
That's right. It's really the best, the more accurate way of describing it would be that they have indulged themselves in the worship of the goat, of the prince, of the serpent, of Satan, of Lucifer, and they lead perfectly normal lives. They're jewel merchants. They travel. They're prominent in their own way, but they do have this indulgence.
Father, here's a part of that I can never understand, that has never made sense to me. And that is, if somebody were to make a pact with the devil, then obviously the implication is if the devil is there to make a pact with them, to make a deal, to make their life, their short mortal life on earth pleasurable, with money or women or travel,
more interesting,
whatever it is they want.
Yes.
Then they are aware of the presence of the devil, and they are obviously aware then of the presence of God as well, and they nevertheless make a conscious, stupid, short-term, blind choice to take what they can get in this lifetime. And to embrace one, you must embrace the other. It's not like it's some wishy-washy prison.
I know you do. It is a very not easy to understand, except when you talk with them, when they let their hair down and peel grapes, as we say, and when they're on their way to being cured of or healed is the proper word. You find that there's an exhilaration, a satisfaction, which is both sensual and sexual and mental, when they really indulge in Luciferian worship. There is a peculiar exhilaration.
Like a drug, then?
Yes, it's a peculiar exhilaration. And of course, the godly instincts in us all, the angelic in us all, because we all have something angelic and something godly, besides everything else, a lot of other negative things, that is quenched. You find in them a horror of anything, what we call sacred and holy, or sacrosanct, or the idea of the sacred, of the awesome.
I only heard this once, Father. We talked about this. I interviewed a Satanist. Her name was Patsy. And this caused a great deal of controversy after the last program that I did with you. I got many, many messages about it. Patsy was a devil worshiper. No question about it. No question about it. Toward the end of the program, she revealed to me that her husband had murdered her little child, a several-year-old child. And she said, I said to her, well, you're sure not going to be with your daughter, are you? In other words, your daughter's going to be in heaven, and you're going to be acknowledged you're going to be in hell. She said, oh, no, I took steps to ensure that my daughter would be in hell with me. And I asked you about that. Was that possible, I asked? And you said, yes. And then, by the way, you're not the only one who said yes. A couple of other experts said the same thing.
Sure.
And people just went berserk. They said, no, it can't be.
I'm sorry, it is. You see, sometimes we moderns think, with a very peculiar and artificial frame of reference as regards the human soul and the human mind. We're not talking, if we really are realistic, we're talking about the basic inclination of the human soul and the human spirit, and not about some informed concept.
So we are making these statements based on what our own frame of reference is.
That's right. Exactly.
Not what spiritual reality is.
Exactly. And it's a frightening thing when you come across what we all know is called bad seed. It's a frightening thing. It's like the two little boys in England that were that boy in England who killed off two of his little children. It's a frightening thing when you meet it, because it's utter art. Let me try and convey it to you and your listeners. You come across this extraordinary...
Father, I'll tell you what, we're at the bottom of the hour.
Okay, why don't we wait? Was the fact that there's nothing more appalling for the mind that I have anyway, than to come across a person technically considered a child with the hard glare of consummate hatred and complete lack of the normal reactions of compassion and feeling and understanding.
Right.
And we do find that today, I was going to say increasingly, but there's a certain increase amongst the age group of 5 to 8. And that's a very disturbing thing. And it's impossible to say that it's developed by TV, by violence on TV, and that sort of business. We don't know. There's no official inquiry into it, because many of the people who should be, like, for instance, there's one section of the FBI, I think, bioethical laboratory or something, I forget the exact title of it. It's one of their institutes, institutes in Washington is supposed to inquire into it, but they poo-poo the idea of active Satanism.
Well, all right. Here's what it seems like to me, the layman. It seems like we have some soulless people being born. I mean, even little children, certainly when I was little, I remember I understood life, the value of life and right and wrong, and now we have children that are killing, and when asked why they did it, they get really interesting answers like to see what it would feel like.
That's right.
That sort of thing.
That's right.
This is from what I would consider to be a soulless being. Either that or otherwise, you covered the ground, television, the rest of it. So then why? What's happening?
Those of us who are engaged in the field of demonology always find finally the footprint of the goat, the footprint of Lucifer, and that is a very distinctive thing. And what is disturbing is that many times young persons of this ilk are very brilliant mentally. They're not stupid. They're not dull. They're not yokels. They're not stupid. On the contrary, they're quite intelligent, outstrip their peers.
Well, in an academic sense, yes. In
an academic sense. And that's a bit frightening, because they're intelligent and they dodge the issue, and the whole thing is very disturbing. And of course it goes back to the breakdown of the family as such in our population. I mean, take for instance the figure, which is solid, that 33% of all births are illegitimate.
33% of all births are illegitimate.
That's right.
Well, fully 1/3.
And sociologists are weary and tired out depicting the general tendency amongst the illegitimate to all sorts of perversions and deficiencies, societal and personal. So I suppose that's part of that picture, but there's still this footprint, this touch of Satanism. Yes, it's a smell. It's a print. You know that some being with a hoof, to use the image, with cloven hoofs, as you know, the Irish have a tradition that if you have a vision an apparition of somebody who claims to be the Virgin Mary or Christ and or a saint, always look at the feet. This is the Irish idea that they can imitate everything except he can't hide his cloven feet. But it's an Irish pishogue, as they say in Gaelic. It's an Irish saying, but there's a lot in it. And I know apparitions or appearances of the Virgin that took place in various parts of Europe, and people who took photographs of the visions and apparitions could never get a picture of their feet.
It's
an Irish thing.
An Irish thing.
Yes.
I have a question for my wife, which is kind of an odd question. I don't know why she's asking this, but I'll ask it, and it is the following. With respect to exorcisms, has it ever occurred, Father, that anybody listening to the tape of an exorcism, or in fact watching a videotape of an exorcism, has, as a result of that, been possessed?
Well, the answer is this. It has happened in our records.
Really?
People who looked at or saw tapes, because we make videotapes, which are very private, or audio tapes of exorcisms, that they, rare enough anyway, that they went for a pact. They invited demonic invasion. Yes, I know.
There's a lot of very weak people out there spiritually,
and it's very exciting. I remember well being brought into a discussion about 10 years ago now in New York, in a very fashionable hotel, by people who wanted desperately to participate in a Satanist exorcism. First of all, in Satanist rites, and doing everything that Satanists did. And I had to keep on warning them, you can't do that with impunity. But they wanted the thrill of it.
Well, to some degree, I understand that. In other words, to view an exorcism, to see the presence of Satan, confirms the presence of God. And I know you need no such confirmation, but for many, it would be a confirmation of that kind. That's why I have a hard time understanding why those who have confirmed that Satan is as real as can be can choose that path. It's just unimaginable to me.
Because one basic reason is that once you delve into it, tamper with it, it does infection. It gives power to that evil spirit, and you can't easily get out of it. There's infection.
All right. You were advisor to two popes.
That's right.
Tonight there is news that just hours ago, for the first time in living human memory, actually about 150 years, they estimate.
That's a very good way of putting it, in living memory.
Yeah, there has been, it says a member of the Pope's elite Swiss Guard apparently shot and killed his new commander and the official's wife Monday night, then turned the gun on himself, all within Vatican walls. A next-door neighbor found the bodies. The Vatican spokesman said this was all done in what he called, quote, a moment of madness, end quote. What in the world could be going on in the Vatican?
Well, I'll tell you, Art, a word to the wise. With anything like this that involves the inner life of an institution which has now centuries-old precautions against publicity and being known what really goes on there, one has to be very, very circumspect and careful about any details released about something that they can't hide very well. It's very hard to hide the death of two officials.
Yes.
And the wife of one. You can't hide that very well.
Well, it's not being hidden. Believe me, it's a lead news item. I've got the letters.
They can't do anything about it. But as to the details, the devil is in the details, as they say. And the details have not been published. We do not know really what happened, except that 3 people are dead. and one apparently, according to the official account, by his own hand. A moment of insanity, momento d'insania, yes, that's one way of covering the issue. It was a general blanket.
A very careful statement, a moment of madness.
Yes, it's a nice way of conceiving. Yes, there was a dreadful thing. What it does indicate is this: murder, the killing of another human being, the shedding of blood, is one of the sure signs of demonic interference.
But in the Vatican?
Well,
I mean, is that a likely target in place, or is that an unlikely target in place?
No. Remember, just 2 popes ago, one pope said, Paul VI was his name. He died in 1978, and I knew him very well. He said the smoke of Satan has entered the sanctuary, and I think you remember a book of mine published in 1996 describing a Luciferian ceremony within the precincts of the Vatican. And remember that the Vatican, the Pope, has in his entourage, he has a chief exorcist. We all know him, Father Gabriel Amort, and there are 8 employees, exorcists, that work both in Rome and Milan and Turin. So there is a lot there. What we've just seen, the crack has opened, and we've seen one effect of it. Put it like this, Art. For somebody in my position, from what I know of how this institutional organization works, it is impossible that there be a triple death by violence within the precincts of the Vatican, amongst Vatican people, unless it is impossible that should happen without demonic interference. Because the thing is should be in principle so sacrosanct and so preserved from such activity that it might take place outside, but not inside.
I was there. I was in the Vatican. And to contemplate that occurring is almost beyond...
I know that. I realize fully how it has impacted you, as we say. But so my word to everybody is, we won't know the details for a long time, if ever, in our lifetime. Just as other assassinations that took place in the Vatican, we haven't got the details yet.
Here's somebody who asks from Tucson, if there are demonic possessions, are there ever angelic possessions? What an interesting question. There are?
Of course there are. Of course there are. I know people, not many, but I know people, and I call them up in some crisis and say, by the way, such and such is needed in such and such a place. And they'll say, oh, well, there's help on the way. And they've talked with their angel, and they live with them. And it's extraordinary. It covers the whole gamut, from young teenage girls to grown men in responsible places in government and in science and the professions, to old people, to little children. It runs the gamut. Yes, there are, because the thrill of the demonic, there's always that. I keep using that word because that's what attracts its adherents, outweighs the angel. And then we have a show, there's a series of films on television about the angels. And, of course, it's a travesty of what an angel really is. And angelic behavior and appointments are treated like, I don't know, in a very, very non-angelic way.
Is there a war going on?
Yes, there is. There's a war every day. And whether you like it or not, we are all in it. And it starts in your heart. And it's with your hands and your feet and your body and your sexuality and your mind. And it's with everybody you meet.
I'll be darned. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Where are you, please?
Hi, I am in Colorado.
Colorado, okay.
Ma'am?
Hi. First of all, I just want to say, Father Martin, you are very much a man with the Spirit of God in you. I just cannot believe this is the first time I've ever heard you. And it's just wonderful listening to you.
Thank you, ma'am, very much.
Oh, well, you're very welcome, my God. I just have a question about Satan worship.
Yes.
Well, this might sound kind of personal for me, but I think it might apply to a lot of other people out there that might be listening.
Yes.
about 6 years ago, my sister and I started having memories of things that had happened to us when we were small children.
Mm-hmm.
We remembered going out in the desert. My parents took us there.
Yes.
And it was out in the Mojave. And there was like a ceremony with this leader. And I don't remember too much because I don't let myself remember. But
yeah. What age were you?
I was 8. So and she was probably 6.
Was there the use of fire?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you bring it up.
And what?
Now that you bring it up, yeah.
Yes. And was there any use of bones?
Oh, I don't remember that, no.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But we both remember specific details exactly. You know, both of us remember the same thing. Remember a baby being killed.
Yeah.
And a woman upholding the baby.
Yeah.
And
that was was Satanist. There's no doubt about that. Usually, what they do is they either ate or pardon my language, it's repulsive to our minds. Anyway, they eventually arrived at having the baby's bones, and they used that to make a certain type of, not music, but a certain type of sound, which they interpret as the voice of Satan. But it's always dead baby's bones.
Oh my!
That was Satanism. Are you a Christian?
Yeah, very much. That has what has gotten me through a lot of things. You know,
Good.
My belief that there is somebody watching over me and
Good.
Whoever it might be, I don't know.
Yes.
But
Did you ever consider Catholicism?
Well, my ex-husband was a Catholic, and I used to go to masses with him.
Yes.
But that got a little bit hard for me.
Was it the new mass or the old mass?
New.
New, yeah. Well, that
wasn't in Latin. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
It is. Well, that got me down too. I never went to it, but
oh no.
I always said the old mass and never said anything else. But the new mass would get me down anyway. But
yeah.
I'll tell you, without prolonging it too much. Next time you're in prayer, ask our Lord Jesus to enlighten you and to give you strength and guidance, as He has up to this.
That was my question. How can I help myself to remember? Because I feel like I'm stuck.
I wouldn't be intent on remembering so much. I would be intent on what I do now as regards the worship of Jesus, who is God, and the cultivation of His angels, and seeking out some good priest, and talking to him. And surely in Colorado, you must find somebody.
Would they believe me, though?
What?
Would they believe me?
If they're a good priest, they'll believe you and they'll know what I know from what you say.
Because I have been to a couple of therapists and just mentioned this, about my past.
Yeah. No,
and they tried to turn it into something else. It was like they didn't believe me.
I know, they don't.
Yeah.
You know the difficulty is this. It's not therapy you need. It's healing. There's a big difference. Therapy consists of a mixture of conversation and logic and pharmacology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's therapy, but that merely makes you viable. You can carry on. But it doesn't heal the soul. Only the grace of our Lord Jesus does that.
You're making me cry.
Well, that's clear, though.
Tears are very, very salvific, darling.
Uh-huh.
Don't be afraid of them. But evidently Christ has touched your heart. And if you pray, He will send you a good priest.
Well, thank you very much.
God bless you, ma'am.
And I hope you have helped other people out there, too.
Please, God.
You take care, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Good morning.
Art Bell, Father Martin, it's an honor to speak with both of you. This is Michael from San Jose.
Hi, Michael.
Hello, Michael.
I have 3 questions for you, Father Martin, and they stem from your book, Hostage to the Devil. I have Windswept House, first edition hardback, looking at it, but I'm halfway through your other book first, so I can't get to the other one until yet. There is a passage in your introduction that says, the Church is the only element in society with the authority and the availing remedy to counteract such manifest evil. I'm talking about possession.
Right.
What is it about the Church itself? If it's just, I was always raised with the thought that the church is the collective sum of the congregation, that the practices within it also, and the people that make it up.
No, it's not quite that. It is the assembled people who are in the state of grace, sanctifying grace in this life, and those who are in purgatory, and those who are in heaven already.
Okay.
It's they as the mystical body of Christ, because it's Christ who coagulates them all into a mystical being, and that is the church. Now, we have also got an external organization, which Art and I have been discussing tonight, in its sorry condition. But that's only the external organization. The church itself is this mystical body of believers on earth, in purgatory, and in heaven. And they have, through their prelates, through their authentic prelates, they have the power of control of evil if they want to use it.
Now, how is it manifested through those priests, bishops, cardinals, monsignors to give you, or I should say you, as an exorcist, the power to combat such evil?
You must have authority from them. They must authorize you. Otherwise, you haven't got the power, and when you try to exorcise, you'll be caught.
But if they do, but I mean, I'm just sitting here and listening to you pen on them for 2 hours, which I believe the church does need an enema, so to speak. Even when it comes down to, when I go to Catholic Church in the morning masses, of watching the fathers delegate the responsibility of giving out the Eucharist to other people, to sick people, when they're pawning that off, it makes me wonder, you know, just how serious are they taking certain responsibilities?
Well, Michael, you put your finger on a very sore spot. The difficulty is, first of all, we're not sure at all that the Novus Ordo, the new form of the Mass, is valid. And even if it were valid, there are certain laws that the priests and bishops are breaking now as regards the distribution of the sacrament.
Yes.
It's a very complex question, and you can't trust their judgment. It's very hard to give you a hard and fast rule for single instances, but you've got to be very careful.
Okay. Well, I promise my next two questions will be a lot simpler. In the second story of your book, Hostage to the Devil, it was the Virgin and the Girlfriend, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
One of the priests whom you finally entered the story into suffered irreparable damage as a result of the exorcism.
That's right.
Have you ever, I mean, I know you're 77 and you're still alive, but have you ever come that close to having something like that? He got his ailment because of a mistake he had. Have you ever come across a situation where you had somehow making a mistake and...
Yes. I'll tell you something, Michael. In general, you never come back from an exorcism the same man.
Yeah, I read that, but you can also put yourself in further jeopardy.
You do. You do. You do. You endanger yourself, but you have to rely on the grace of God to save you. But you do. You suffer irreparable damage in one sense.
Father, he's asking whether you ever have come close to that kind of disastrous personal
situation. Yes, I have.
You have.
You have. And my last question, I guess, is in reading Hostage to the Devil, there doesn't seem, like I said, I've only read it halfway through. I'm right now into Uncle Ponto.
Oh, Uncle Ponto. That's amusing.
But I'm wondering when we're going to start reading the Malachi Chronicles. Are we ever going to get your work, a chronicle listing of some of your cases where you handled them?
Good question. Father?
Good question. I must tell you, Michael and Art, I bore me. I really do. I'm bored with myself. That's why I keep going away from myself. And I find it hard to believe that I should write a personal story. I really do.
So you may not do it?
I mean, I have no inclination at all, Art and Michael, to do it at all. As I say, I'm a bore to me. I really am. And I don't like me in that sense. I like me in the sense that I want to go to heaven and be with Christ and the angels forever and all my family. But I don't think I'm interesting in that sense. Not for a written chronicle.
Well, we think you are.
It's very kind of you, Art, for a poor old guy like me.
First time